Hey, Cody. My name is Jeff. I'm a divorce coach, divorce recovery coach. So I help men to recover from a divorce, maybe 6 months to 18 months after they've been through it. A divorce is such a miserable experience, and it leaves a lot of people devastated. And I help men to create a better life after their divorce than they had before it.
Okay.
So about
That's
10 years ago, I went through just this miserable time. Um, but I was able to pick up the pieces and actually make a better life after the divorce.
okay. That's I imagine that's a pretty big job. That's a pretty big responsibility helping people through divorce. When you say recovery, like what are you talking about? Like, just emotionally or mentally or, a combination of everything?
It's kind of a combination of everything, but it starts with the emotions.
Okay.
So divorce is like I was saying, it's such an emotionally draining period of your life, and I don't think a lot of men are prepared for what what happens in a divorce, and it's just one thing after another, and it's we're just not trained to deal with emotions.
Hmm.
So being able to let go of those emotions and find that center, that's where we start.
This episode is brought to you by Excel Coaching Academy. Hey guys, I'm really excited to let you know that I started a mindset coaching business. So, what I want to do with this business is I want to help entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople, leaders, and fitness enthusiasts or athletes develop the right mindset to increase revenue, improve business or performance, and overcome the challenges needed to become the best version of themselves. You can get more information about this by emailing info@excelcoaching.academy. So when you say that most people aren't prepared for it, it's crazy because I believe that most people aren't prepared for a divorce, or at least most men. But I also feel like, and this is just from the outside looking in, I feel like most divorces you can kind of see coming, which means that because so it's not like I don't know, it's a crazy concept. But what do you think is like the main things they're not prepared for? Like what really are they not prepared for? I guess.
Maybe from the outside you can see that
Oh,
it's
okay.
coming, but I don't know that a lot of men know that it's coming.
Hmm.
There's a stat that 70% of marriages are initiated by the woman.
Hmm.
Um, so I think a lot of men just aren't tuned into it. So that's why we start with the emotions, because a marriage is an emotional thing. It's you have an emotional connection to somebody, and when you lose that connection, that's when you get in trouble in the relationship. And so often you get caught in, oh, I got to get the kids to soccer practice, or work, and I got to clean the gutters, and you get locked into that um, thing by thing, that task by task relationship with your partner, and you lose that connection. So maybe she decides she wants to change it up. So that's how you get that stat.
Hmm. Why do you so okay, there's so many different ways I want to go with this because I've been fortunate enough to never have a divorce. I mean, I've actually never been married, so I guess that's I'm not really I can't really put myself in that category because I've never been married, but I've never been divorced either. But I know people who have been divorced, um, specifically men. I've known more men who've been divorced than women. But I believe that 70% of divorces are initiated by women. I believe that, and I don't know why I believe that, but I do think that it's harder, maybe not harder, but less common for a man to end a relationship, I mean, marriage or just dating or whatever. I think just from the people that I know, I think it's less common for the man to be the one to break up with a person or divorce or whatever.
Agreed. I can say from my point of view, I can't speak for everybody. I can speak for um, some of the people I worked with, that you just get locked into that. Like I was saying earlier, you just get locked into that. I got to do this. I got to get to work, and then I got to and I think that the dynamics of a relationship have changed over the last 50, 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas men used to go to work, bring home the bacon, and the woman was usually a stay-at-home mother, and that dynamic may have worked in that time period. But I think now, given that women are in the workforce just as much as men, and women are looking for their purpose beyond just being a mother, I think they're calling men forward to be something more than just breadwinners.
Hmm.
And they're still looking for that emotional connection. They still want to be safe in the relationship. And I think that it's our job to keep up with that.
Hmm. So, do you think that I don't know, do you think that that's unrealistic or that's an unreasonable expectation on men to do both all those things simultaneously? Not trying to put you on the spot, but so there's two different ways that people think about this, man. Some people think that like, oh man, the society's asking a lot of men, and it's not necessarily fair, and there's all these things going on. And then some people think that society's asking too much for women. And I don't want to make this a gendered argument, but what I want to make it is, so I personally think that this is what I think, that men have a big responsibility, whether that's dating or in society. I think both sides have their responsibilities, and I think there's things that the other side can't do that the one side can. But I think that men definitely have a big responsibility. But I also think that that like most of that is okay. Like it's okay to pursue a thing, a career or a goal or a family, whatever that is. It's okay to build that thing, work hard towards that thing, but it should also be okay for us simultaneously to be grounded in who we are and provide that emotional support and stability to our partner. I wouldn't necessarily, in my personal opinion, I wouldn't necessarily say that we are, the responsibility is too heavy for us. I think it is a big responsibility. And I think if we pursue that, it will make us better men, both professionally and personally, is what I believe.
Right. I think we're in agreement on that. I think the dynamics are changing, and I don't know where it's going to settle.
Hmm.
I'm just saying we're being called forward to do something different from the way we've been doing it in the past.
Right.
I don't think, all I'm suggesting here is emotional self-awareness, emotional
Right.
self-regulation, and to learn to be centered in yourself, to no longer be the guy that flies off the handle if, something goes wrong, to
Mm-hmm.
find that center in yourself. That's what I'm suggesting. And that plays a part in not just at home, but at work, everywhere in life. So, and I'm saying that if you go through a divorce, and I'm going to bring it back to divorce because this was my path. Because before this, I was a very logical guy. I was at home and I would go to work, do my job. I was a programmer, and then I would come back home and I was still in that logical place.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a place to connect with a woman. If you're going out to the bar to pick up a girl, you don't go up to her and talk about algorithms or crypto or
Right.
investing or anything like that. You tease her. You bring out the emotional side of her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying you need to have that in a relationship. A 20, 25-year, 50-year relationship, you need to keep that going. So is it too much? I don't know. I'm just saying the dynamics of the relationship are changing, and I think they're going to settle somewhere different from what we had in the past.
Yeah. No, I 100%. Yeah, I see that. Um, so with the people that you work with, and I'm not asking for any specific people or anything, but just in general, from what you see, it sounds like one thing, just based on what we're saying here, it sounds like one thing that really hurts men in divorce is stopping that process of growing as a person. And the reason I say that is because the people that I've known who have been in divorce, and I've expressed this to them, that if they so I think what you just said was like too much hyperfixation on the logical side, but I've also seen it on the inverse, too much fixation on the emotional investment.
Mhm.
So it's like there's a crazy balance that has to be had. And this is, I'm not the coach here, but this is from my perspective, seeing people who have been in this situation. They've done too much on the investment side, the emotional investment side, which means they were not continuing on their progression as a man or their career, whatever it was. And then when the relationship ended, it was like they didn't really have anything uh to what fall back on, maybe, or to rely on, or they didn't have their sense of self because they were so invested on the emotional attachment, which I don't know, could be one of the reasons that the relationship didn't last. Because like I said, there's a balance. I mean, there's definitely a balance with that.
Yeah, you can't outsource your emotional well-being to your partner. So um, I'm glad you brought that up, though. So there's the logical side, and then there's the emotional side. If you are purely in the emotional, or sorry, if you're purely in the logical side, you're never going to connect to somebody. You're not going to connect on a deep level.
Right.
And I really believe one of the core things I believe is that a relationship is there to help you grow as a person. And
Mm.
if you look at what is it, the seven regrets of the dying. There was somebody who wrote a book about. She was a palliative care nurse, and she wrote about um, the biggest regrets of dying people, and like the top five of the top seven of them have to do with relationships. So
Wow.
we're we're relationship bound people. We're entities. We're meant to have relationships. We're not meant to be isolated.
Mm.
What I'm trying to say. So relationships are super important. So you can't just be purely logical. On the other end of that, you can't just be emotional because you're going to get blown from which way to that way. So
Right.
neither of those you can't be too in either side of that. The goal is to be in the middle, and I call that being in the heart. So you're not logical, you're not emotional. You can feel emotions, you observe emotions. You also know where they're coming from. You know that they're just an emotion. And I don't mean that emotion isn't real, but you experience that emotion. You still feel scared. You still feel happy, sad, any of those things, but you're experiencing that emotion. And inside of an emotion is feedback, and you're getting feedback about the world. So as men, we have to go into the burning building to save the kids. We have to go over the top of the foxhole and either die or kill the other guy, and we're going to be scared in those moments. That's natural, and at times we have to push the emotions down. But if you spend your life pushing the emotions down, it's going to make you weird. It's going to make you angry. It's going to make you sad. It's going to make you dysfunctional.
Yep.
So at some point you have to process that, and I think our society doesn't really have, Western society in general doesn't really have those rituals that we used to have. Have you ever seen the movie The Northman?
I have not. No.
It's it's got a scene just before they go attack a village, and all the men, they're like doing this ritual where they go and scream, and they're almost animalistic, and they're getting into this place where they're building their emotions up in order to attack a village, and they're using those emotions, that energy, to go and attack that village. And then it lets them burn that off. They're not repressing the emotion, they're bringing it up. So if we can do that, if we can use emotions to our advantage rather than being afraid of them,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to have that repressing of those emotions.
Yep, I got you. So you brought up a good point that I want to touch on about this specific topic. You mentioned earlier emotional awareness, and I
Hmm.
think that's a pretty good way to say it. And then you mentioned, the being in the foxhole or going into the burning building and this kind of stuff. So, and there's a debate maybe that men don't necessarily express emotions enough. I kind of see the logic on that. I kind of think that there's a way, I think as a man in a relationship, there's a way to express your emotions. And I wouldn't even say express, I would say communicate would be the word I would probably use.
Hmm.
But it's like you just mentioned it with this burning building situation. It's like as men, we have these, I mean, everybody has these emotions, but it's like in these situations where we have to control these emotions in that situation to do the thing that needs to be done, whether that's the burning building, that's the attacker on the street in the middle of the night, whatever it is. Like we have to learn how to control and process these emotions in a specific way. So we're taking that framework, and then when we go to a relationship or when we're with an intimate person and we are using that same mindset, like, oh, well, this is how I'm not supposed to express this in this situation because this is the philosophy I have about this. Now, these are obviously two different things. We're talking about apples and oranges. We're talking about life and death versus, being in a relationship. But I think the battle or the the uh the trick for men is to learn how to communicate those emotions with your partner and not just suppress those and just get the job done. We're talking about being in this logical mode, being in this, problem solving, get this thing done right now, because that's how we see a lot of things as men, a lot of us. But it's like, I think the trick is taking that emotional awareness and trying to apply it to this situation and not necessarily going for, the quote unquote life or death outcome or the logical outcome, but instead communicate the emotions in a way that's going to be conducive with our partner to get the problem solved or whatever, or just experience what, like listen to what she says she's experiencing. It's not all about, like, you probably hear a lot, like, we get in this problem solving mode, like they just want to solve the problem. She's trying to communicate her issues, and we're just in, problem solving, and then she doesn't feel heard because she's just trying to express herself, and that's that whole thing. But the point I'm trying to make is that, like, we have this, I guess you would call it maybe a framework in our brain as men to be able to turn these emotions off. So when we say that, like, when society says that men don't express their emotions and like they don't communicate their emotions or whatever it is, it's like that is one of the very things that as men we have that allows us to operate in those situations, on the Titanic and those, attackers and that kind of thing. So I think so I'm not making an excuse, but I am saying I think we need to give ourselves as men a little bit of grace and say, look, this is a system that we can use when we need to use it. Let's just learn how to use it in a relationship that's going to be better for our partner and ourselves. Um, I know there's a lot there, and I'm saying a lot that might be sort of controversial in some spaces, but I don't know, man. I just feel like that, we have that framework, we're aware of it, but we don't necessarily need to apply that in the relationship, in the problem solving mode, in the, the deep logical mode of like fix this right now type thing. I guess it's just I guess the trick is learning how to, communicate those in that way. And I think that's one of the big problems that we have as men, as far as communicating emotions, because we're kind of oscillating between the two sometimes.
I think we're very good at compartmentalizing emotions, but I do think we feel very deeply.
Hmm.
And one of the ways I've heard it explained is that men in the past traditionally have been the ones willing to step up and go to war, and we're the ones who are willing to fight and die to defend the things we love.
Yep.
That is an extreme amount of love. If I, the way I
Right.
see it,
Right. Yep.
be able to die for something you love,
Hmm.
like that is the ultimate sacrifice, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
To go to work. I mean, this is it's slightly different, but to get up, go to work. I used to hate going to this job. I'd get up, drive an hour in traffic, and, go sit at a desk under a fluorescent light. I was just destroying my soul.
Mm-hmm.
But to do that every day for my family, I did that out of love.
Right.
That is, and I know that's not, pardon the juxtaposition. I didn't mean to
No.
compare those two things, but feeling that deep amount of love by doing those things is, I think, how we express that emotion. Brene Brown has a quote to your point about wanting to fix things, and she says, "Show me a woman who can sit with a man who's had a tough day,
Mm-hmm.
I'm butchering this quote, but show me a woman who can sit with a man who's in his emotions, and I'll show you a woman who's done a lot of work. Similarly, show me a man who can sit with a woman and not try to fix things, but just allow her to be, and that's a man who's done a lot of work." And I think if you can find that type of relationship, I think that's gold.
Oh yeah.
The number one most important thing a man has is his partner. His wife is the, I don't mean thing, but the element that is the predictor of how successful he's going to be.
For sure.
So choose carefully. And when you've chosen, it's an investment. That relationship is an investment. Obviously, it's a person. You have a relationship with a person. Treat her like that. Cherish her, protect her, love her. But working together with somebody towards common goals, like, you can't, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
When you're connected in a deep way, I think you're unstoppable.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So I love that we're having this conversation, man, because I think this is something that I think about a lot. And this is sort of my message on this, is that I think one of the reasons we have so many issues in relationships is like, men try to love women in the way that men want to be loved, and women try to love men in the way that women want to be loved. So, I think it's a very, whether people will say this out loud or not, it's a very common thing for people to believe that, respect to men is equivalent to emotional love to a woman. Like, respect is how a man is loved, and love, emotional connection to a woman, is how a woman is loved. And I think we sort of have at least that's how it is for most people, but we sort of have a misunderstanding, I think, about that, because we're trying to, like I said, as men, we're trying to, I mean, it's obviously, because look, here's the thing. You can talk about, you love your person and you do all this, but like, people, the reason I say that respect is more important to a man, because people will, and you can say they don't love them, but people will cheat on a person that they love with. They will be unfaithful to a person that they love, but they will not do that to a person they respect. So like, you treat a person differently that you respect. And like, as a man, I think when you are with your woman and you have your relationship with her, I think the respect is built in, because you simply can't love this person or care about her if you don't respect her, But anyways, I think there's a misunderstanding about like what the other person is looking for. Because if you go on these dating podcasts, man, if you listen to these dating podcasts and you hear like a man talk about a woman or a woman and vice versa, it's like a lot of times the things that they say, you'll see the comments, like, they're like, no, that's not what I'm looking like. I'm not looking for this. And then if you have a woman that says, like, just let's say it's a woman in this case, a woman who says the things that men are actually looking for, a man is actually looking for, like, they'll be overloaded with comments like, oh yeah, that's right, whatever. And so I'm just saying, I think that this awareness of this conversation is important. So I don't know if you have if you have a response to that or not, but I wanted to ask you about we're talking about emotions. I wanted to ask you about the emotions after divorce. So like, a man goes through a divorce, they have these unhealthy emotions. They're kind of just like battling this thing internally. Do you help them with sort of a positive way to direct those emotions, whether that's the business or the gym or, just self-improvement or whatever? But I want to give you a chance to respond because I know I said a lot right there.
Yeah. I still think that I said earlier, I still believe that the dynamic between men and women is evolving. I don't know
Mm,
where it's going to settle.
right.
What I am suggesting is that and I'm not suggesting, you cry in front of your woman. I'm not suggesting that.
Right.
You don't have to be, um, you don't have to be driven by your emotions. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm
Mhm.
just suggesting that you feel your emotions and you connect with that.
Right.
I can totally feel when mine is upset. Um, and then she feels appreciated because I'm connecting on that level.
Mhm.
So, in terms of when it comes to dating, yeah, I think that those goalposts have shifted, and I think that women are looking for more of a deeper emotional connection, and I think this is the way things are going to be headed.
Mhm.
I think they're calling us forward to develop that ability in ourselves, and I'm, I don't know how to tell you this, but since I've done this work, since I've done this inner work, I've noticed other people react differently to me. They have an emotional reaction, and I just, I don't even react to it, and I just notice how they react to me when that happens. So, what was the point after that you made? I was going to go.
I was asking if you help people sort
Yes,
of put that emotions into healthy things.
yeah, that's the game. And a lot of guys after a divorce, they tend to throw themselves into something. And what I encourage them, I yes, I encourage that. That's better than um, sitting on the couch. The couch is sitting on the couch is like hell. You're trapped in purgatory, and that's just depression there. On the other side of that is covering up those wounds by doing something else. So starting a business, going to the gym. Yes, go do those things. 100% go do those things, but also do your own inner work. Go look at yourself and look at those wounds that you're carrying around. So 100% go to the gym. I didn't start going to the gym until after I got divorced, and it was just such a good relief. Um, and we store emotions in the body, so you're working the emotions out by going to the gym.
Right.
So that's the bare minimum. What I do notice is a lot of men go through this anger phase, and I don't know if you've looked into this side of it, but that red pill side of things after a divorce is pretty toxic.
Mhm.
And I try to coach men through that. And that's why I tend to work with men 6 months to 18 months after a divorce, because that's when that red pill, they're discovering that red pill stuff, and they're like, oh, women are this and women are that. And
Mhm.
I don't think that's healthy for either side.
Absolutely not.
So I think red pill is a very heady response to a divorce. They go into their heads and they're analyzing what they went through,
Mhm.
but they're not feeling it. They're not getting into their hearts. And ironically, by going into your head, you're just going into your emotions. You're reacting with anger. There's, all kinds of stories of guys who punch the walls and, leave holes in the drywall. Men after a divorce, their suicide rate is 8 to 10 times what women's are.
Wow.
We are not processing divorce well, and I think that's a crisis.
Mhm.
So what we're doing right now is not working,
Yep.
and I don't think red pill is a or MGTOW. I don't know if you know what that is. Men going their own way. I don't think those are healthy outlets.
So, yeah. So my response, I have to preface my response to that with what you said a couple minutes ago, which was about the self-awareness aspect. Um, you were talking about sort of you could identify in yourself when you were irritated or whatever, and you were able to communicate that. And this is why I think that this is why it's so important to use the right words and to say communicate your emotions rather than express your emotions, because I don't think we want, either men or women, we do not want other men to express their emotions. Because if you're angry and you express that, okay, well, what does that mean? We don't want to express these things. We can communicate it. And I think essentially what the red pill, and this is without a doubt going to piss some people off, but I think essentially what the red pill community is the inability to communicate emotions, and they're just simply expressing that anger onto a whole group of people. Women are XYZ or whatever it is, or they experience this thing, they have a breakup, and they don't work on themselves, and then so they apply that to a whole group of people. Now, I think there's certain things for both sides, men and women, that do apply broadly to both sides. I think there's a lot of things that are general. I don't think that every single person applies to every single category. But I think that what I do think is that part of being a good man is when that you go through these things that hurt you or try to damage you, instead of reversing that damage onto the thing that damaged you, use that to better yourself. I mean, you hear this all the time, man. Like you go through trauma and you can use that to better yourself. So if you go through a breakup, you know, don't use that to hurt the person or to every other woman that you come across, because that's not going to help anybody. So the whole point of being a good man, me personally, is to take that thing and grow from it. And if you have a community of men who got hurt or they don't respect women or whatever it is, and they go out and they say these things online about an entire group of people when they had one or a few, interactions with people, that's not going to help anything. And that's the exact opposite, I think, what needs to be done. Um, I think that the ability to experience these things as men and use that energy, whether you were talking about like with the gym, starting a business, working on yourself, that's the way to do it. Like you can take that pain. Because here's the thing. What are you going to do? You're going to go through this, you're going to be hurt from this. And then what's the alternative? To discriminate against an entire gender of people and to use that to just, drink yourself into oblivion? Or, I mean, I don't understand what the alternative is. That's the only way. Like you have that's the two choices you have. Um, that's my response on red pill. I don't know, man. It's not really. I think you said it the best. It's not a healthy way to to move on from this. Now, to play devil's advocate, I understand that some men 100% get their life messed up from a divorce or from a woman who simply is not a good person, did not have their best interest in mind, whatever. I understand that those cases exist. I understand that. But I don't think we can't just take that and apply it to every single woman that's out there, and vice versa. The same thing with women. If they have a bad experience with a man, they can't take that and apply it to every single man, because that's simply not the case. I mean, first of all, if you're meeting the same person, if you have the same relationship over and over, the problem may not be the other person. If you're having the same issue in every single relationship you go to, you kind of have to ask yourself, like, hey, what am I doing to make this happen? And you talked about like with the holes in the wall and that kind of thing, man. All that is a man who cannot who his emotions control him, and he does not control his emotions. And controlling your emotions does not mean don't have emotions or like don't communicate them. That's not what it is. But you can't let that take over and be your reaction.
The irony of being in your head all the time is that it inevitably ends up that you're in your emotions. You can't repress one side. What you repress, you express.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying about punching a hole in the wall. I box. That's my outlet. So
Yep.
The other day I told my wife, I'm in a really bad mood. I'm going to the gym. And I went and beat the shit out of a heavy bag. And I
So
felt much better after that. So that day, that was my way of expressing that emotion. And sometimes you do need to express that emotion. But I'm in control enough that I can go get changed, go put my boxing gear into my bag, walk 25 minutes to the gym, get changed, and beat the crap out of a heavy bag rather than punching the wall.
mm, yep.
That's the difference I'm suggesting.
And and also too, I think that is the way to do it, because I think that's what makes, I hate to use this term, man, because it's so cliche and overused, and there's like 1,000 different definitions from it. But you think of, like, you hear the word high quality man, high value man, whatever, whatever. And so the red pill community wants you to think that what that means is you just sleep with as many women as possible, as absolutely as quick as possible, and you can just pull all these women. But it's like, that's not what it is, dude. It's like, what makes you, to me, and I'm not into men, so maybe I can't comment on this to say what is a high quality man. But like, to me, a man who is a strong, good man is a man who has self control. And so it's, maybe that's of emotions, maybe that's of, other women. You see an attractive woman, but you're kind of in a relationship, you don't pursue her, whatever. So it comes down to the self control, and that might be, like you said, in these emotions. Like you said, when you feel this thing, you're like, oh, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is my outlet to this thing. I'm going to go do this. And so it all comes down to that self control, man. And I think, just to close the loop on this red pill thing, I think if you are a person, a man who has access to all these females, and you explore all those avenues or those options, that there's no self control in that. Like, it's like, what, I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian psychologist. He says that a good man is not just a good man. A good man is a man who has the
Ability to
option or
choose
the
the good.
ability to be very dangerous. And so if you have the ability to be dangerous, or to be, explore options or whatever it is, and you choose to do good, it's the choosing of the thing that makes you a good person. And this, we can this isn't even a gendered argument. You can go into women or men or whatever. If you have the ability to manipulate or to hurt somebody or to do whatever, and you choose to do good, that's what makes you the good person. you know but it comes down to, I think you hit the nail on the head. It comes down to that self control, I feel like. And I think that's what, as men, I think that's whether that's discipline, or maybe, I'm not sure. There's different avenues to explore to work on self control, but I think that's what it comes down to is the self control, of whatever, the emotion or the whatever.
It's the mastery of the emotion. I can feel the emotion and say, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm depressed. And I can process that emotion and let it go.
Hmm.
And I can do that, in while I'm sitting there.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, and or, get my stuff and go to the gym and process it that way. Um, to your point, to close my loop on red pill, I think it's a natural phase to go through, and I don't want to demonize it too bad, because I think that if you go through something traumatic like a divorce, and
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who says every father should take his son to a divorce court when they turn 18 and have them sit there all day just to see what it's like. And then you'll be extra cautious about choosing your partner. I think when you have your world taken away from you, and I lost everything. It's that old joke. Don't get married, just buy somebody you hate a house. I
Hmm.
lost my house. I lost, a chunk of my paycheck. And it's not just about money. I lost, she accused me of all sorts of horrible things, being abusive, not caring about my kids. And when you go through something like that, of course, you're going to end up angry. But you have the choice. And I think it's very natural to go through that phase. And you have that choice. You can either stay bitter and angry, or you can hold up that mirror to yourself and take a look at yourself, and warts and all, and decide if that's the way you're going to keep living.
Yep.
I don't, we, I think that divorce is so common that, 50% of first marriages fail, 60% of second, 70% of third. It's
Wow.
such a common um, life event to go through, and it's perceived as a huge failure. But what I'm suggesting here is that you don't look at it as a failure. You look at it as um, an opportunity to hold that mirror up and look at yourself. And where coaching comes in, where my coaching comes in, is holding up that mirror to somebody else, because you're still going to have blind spots no matter how good you are at looking at yourself. And when you have that, I think you're able to grow much quicker and better. And that's where you can make a better life for yourself afterwards.
For sure. Yeah, no, for sure. You mentioned something important right there. Uh, you said that it's natural. These emotions are natural, and I think that's a big thing that we've had for a long time as men. I don't know. I don't know where this came from, but you hear about if you feel X way, then that means you're less of a man for being sad. Don't be sad, man up type thing. But again, it comes down to the self control, man. It comes down to whether if you're expressing that or communicating that. Um, so okay, so we talked about emotions. We talked about the self awareness, what I think is a huge piece of it. We talked about sort of putting this um, energy into healthy things, whether that's a business or. And when I say this, I'm not saying to just don't address the issues with yourself. I mean, I think do that simultaneously while you're putting the energy into the gym or the business or whatever it is. I want to ask you about what do you think it is, and I know this is probably so many things, but if you had to maybe narrow it down to a few, just from the people that you work with, what do you think it is that leads to the actual divorce? Like, is there certain things not being done, certain things that are being done that shouldn't be? What? And I know, like I said, it's probably so subjective to the person, and there's so many different things. But if you had to kind of narrow it down to a few things,
It's tough to narrow it down.
okay.
In my case, I can send you a picture afterwards if you really want. You can include it in the show notes. There was old Jeff, and then there's new Jeff, and the line is my divorce.
Hmm.
Old Jeff was a programmer, and probably a pretty stereotypical programmer, um, and very logical. Didn't know I didn't know how to connect with people, and I was massively overweight and depressed, and um, that is weakness.
Hmm.
And I think when we are weak, I don't think that's attractive. And I think there's a common thread between the men I work with, is that there's some sort of weakness in them. And it might not be expressed physically. Um, it might be financially. It might be in the relationship. It might be emotionally, but there's some sort of weakness in there. And I think strength is very attractive in men.
Hmm.
So that's how I would generalize it, but individually, it's different every time. It could. One guy I worked with he was very obsessed with status
Hmm.
and how he came across, but underneath that was weakness.
Right. I was going to say that's just essentially a cover up for insecurity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Yeah. So that makes sense. Well, before I say this, I want to say this because I have a follow up question to that. But so you say that you have these two pictures of yourself in the middle of your divorce, and I really like that the way that you put that because it shows sort of a linear pattern. Um, although I would imagine it's not just two pictures; it's what happened in between that was probably very painful. It was a very painful journey to go through that. Um, and so I don't want to get too you can get as personal as you want to get with this answer, but I do want to ask you so the journey of these two, and I would like to see those two pictures, and I'll put them up. I can overlay them on this part of the conversation. Um,
Good.
but so when you're going through this journey, and you're essentially you feel like you lost everything, your house and all this stuff, and you're going through this journey, like what do you think it was that sort of kept you going through this journey to obviously become, a better version of yourself? Because like I said, I think one of the things you mentioned when you were talking about the programming was you couldn't really connect with people.
Mhm.
But like now, here you are on a podcast, like talking out in the open, and so you've obviously made improvements with that, and you look like you take care of yourself. I don't know if you know this. So skin, you have very clear skin, and I'm not trying to get weird or anything, but you have very clear skin, and that's usually indicative of good health. People who have, so there's a connection. Just on a side tangent, learned this from Dr. Andrew Huberman, neuroscientist at Stanford. There's a connection to gut health and our outside, in our general health immune system and our skin. So people who have really good looking skin, clear skin, there's usually good health involved in that. So anyways, you look like you're doing well. Is what I'm trying to say. You're on a podcast. You
I
kind of gotten out
appreciate
of
that.
that.
Thanks, man.
So you kind of gotten out of that you know shyness, I guess you could say, of where you said you used to be couldn't really connect. So going through that journey, and I'm sure it was, I can't even imagine what that was, but what do you think it was that sort of kept you going? Like, man, one day this will be better. One day I'll be out of this, or, whatever it was.
There was this. I'm going to try to describe it the best I can because it was very personal, and I don't mind talking about it. I feel like um, personal conversations like this open the door to more men speaking about this kind of stuff. So, and I think that's very powerful. Um, there was I've been somebody who's always sought out truth, and it felt like I was living a lie to that
Mm,
portion of my life. And I started seeing somebody who did this technique, NET, neural emotional technique, and what it does is it releases emotions in the body. And I found that at the time I was blown away by it. And I started noticing little changes in myself, and I felt, immensely more aware, and it felt like I was getting closer to that truth that I'd been seeking. And I lost a bunch of weight. I lost like 50 pounds in 6 months, something like that.
mm,
And then that's when my marriage collapsed. And what I learned out of that is that some people just want to stay where they are,
mm.
and they will try to bring you back to that place
Yep.
of where you were. And my ex even said that. She says, I'm looking to put you back in your place. And that was such a moment of clarity. And because I had that drive in myself to seek truth, that was like I'm not going back to that. I'm going forward. And that taught me that I was on the right path. So just
For
keep
sure.
seeking that truth. Keep seeking um, a deeper connection to myself. And that's where I on my website, I've got that divorce is a spiritual battle. Like the tagline on my site is "Divorce is war," and what I mean by that is it's a spiritual war. It's a war to, and what I mean by spiritual is that connection to yourself, that connection to your true self, and that's been my center is trying to find that true self, to peel back all those layers to
Mm.
get to who I am. That's been my driver.
Yeah, man, I can only imagine because that it's a very empowering thing to feel like you are being true to yourself. And I imagine that a person who's sort of in that space, it's almost like anything that happens to you externally, if you are operating within truth of yourself, to yourself, that's probably very empowering to be able to push you forward. Um, you mentioned that this person basically essentially didn't want you to outgrow them. You wanted to improve, and this person maybe wanted to stay kind of where they were at, is what it sounds like. And I
But I
think,
think I really, this is me being as empathetic as possible. I think that growth in the way I'm talking about it is extremely, extremely scary.
right.
And
Oh,
it's
for
not
sure.
for everybody.
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
some people just would rather bury themselves and drink themselves on the couch for the rest of their life.
For sure.
That's fine.
But
You
see,
wanna-
but here's the thing though. And see, this is the paradox with that we're in as men, a lot of us. Had you felt that for yourself, and she expressed, I don't know if she expressed in the moment some sort of way, maybe unconsciously, that she didn't want you to do this, and you said, okay, well, I feel like I need to better myself in this way, but because you don't want me to, I'm not going to. If you would have went down that road, you probably would have lost the relationship anyways, because I think that's one thing that women, they it's almost like they lose respect for you if they see that's something that
I'm going to
if they
disagree with you there. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to
okay,
disagree with you there. The
okay,
guy she partnered up with now basically looks like the old version of me,
okay,
and he's a programmer. I'm a tall guy, so he's a tall guy. Like
right,
there's a whole bunch of qualities that kind of line up. But
okay,
being around him, if you're listening to this, I don't mean this as a knock, but you're he's not. You can feel that anger in him. Like
mm,
there's that feeling of being pushed down, of not being genuine, of
mm-hmm,
not expressing yourself fully, and that's where the split happened. Is I wanted to become more of myself.
hmm. Well, I don't know a mission that's more important than that in life, And I mean that unfortunately might cause you to lose people, man. But it's like, gosh, what? Like I said, what do you do? What's the alternative? What do you do? You're not authentic to yourself, and then you're basically pissed off at yourself, for the rest. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just feel like that's
I would
you know,
rather have the whole world against me than stand against my own soul.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
that's why choosing a partner is the most important thing you can do. And with I don't want to say new wife, we just celebrated 12 years together. So
Congratulations.
thank you. But we have grown together, and
Mm-hmm.
that is a quality that I value. So selecting your partner is such an important thing. And I don't mean to sound it like you're going to the pound to choose a puppy. I don't mean that. It's
Right.
just, you've got to choose the right person, because something so critical as choosing yourself over being, and we've had many moments where we've disagreed on, where it's been like, this is the way that's genuine for me versus, I feel scared going forward. And
Mm-hmm.
and we're able to express those and discuss those. We used to argue about it, but now we're able to express it very clearly, that I'm having one of these moments where this feels right to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying feels very specifically, because it is a feeling you're chasing, but not an emotion.
Right.
We can express those moments to each other, of this feels genuine to me versus I'm scared of that.
Hmm.
Those are two different things.
Right. Right. Um. Well, I'm glad that you have that sort of, I guess maybe a system in place, for lack of a better word, for that.
And
Uh,
and that's where I want to bring men to, is having
yeah,
that relationship.
yeah, yeah. Because I think that's a big thing, man. Because you don't want to, and I can't speak for women, but I know as men, you don't want to be in a situation where you're basically choosing between your partner or your future self, like the best future self that you could be. You don't want to be in that situation, and to find a person that you can maybe grow with together, I think is there you can't put a value on that. um that's like you said, that process is a scary one, and not a lot of people are ready for that, you know
Yeah.
so
And there's moments where it's like, if I say this, I'm risking the relationship.
hmm,
But if I don't do this, if I don't say that, then um, I'm risking the relationship with myself.
right, and you can't be fully you in the relationship anyways,
No,
because you're not fully yourself.
no, exactly.
Yeah. And that's kind of the point I was kind of leading up to with the if I know in your situation is a little bit different, but I think in a lot of situations, if a woman doesn't want you to pursue a thing or whatever, it may not even be the case that she doesn't actually want you to do that. I mean, you hear about like these tests or whatever, like these shit tests or whatever they're called. But it's like, I don't know, man. I just feel that I think man or woman, whoever it is, I think you should stay true to who you think you are. Like you shouldn't let a person like, try to, if you have an improvement that you want to make, another person should not take that, away from you. Because I think that is us improving as people in whatever way that means for us. I think that's one of the key reasons that we're all here, is we are getting better as time goes on. Hopefully if we're doing the right thing. But I think that personal improvement is something it's only you can do it. You're the only one that can make it happen. And I think that's one of the important things that we're all kind of striving for here, or at least most of us. Hopefully most of us.
I think that's the purpose of life.
Yeah.
Like we're getting deep here, but I think that's the meaning of life, is to improve. And I think relationships are a key part of that, because a relationship holds up a mirror to us. A
Oh,
relationship isn't about, sex or, you know, combining incomes or whatever else you might imagine. And, those are superficial things. Yes, they're part of a relationship. Yes, you can't have a relationship without those things. But what I argue is that relationship, if she's expressing something, if she's angry about something, I always look inside of myself for what that thing is before I go to her. So if I'm finding she's pissing me off, I go and look inside myself.
right.
It's always personal responsibility.
Well, and I don't think you can operate from that space if you if you don't put if you haven't done the work leading up to that. Like the I don't know. I think vulnerability is a very big aspect, but I think it's only possible if you put yourself in that space to be self-aware and ask what the problems actually are. You mentioned relationships being a mirror, and you're not the first person that I've heard say that, and I think it's a very profound way to say it.
Mhm.
Because it's like we think about a relationship, we think about the other person, we think about like who this person is and who they are, but it's like maybe it's not so much about who that person is as much as it is about who you are. You know,
Oh, that's a good way of saying it. I like that. That's profound.
Yeah, I don't know, but I do think that there's almost nothing that will teach you about yourself the way intimate relationships will, you
Yeah.
know.
And it's
Um
scary as hell.
and I think we would almost really we'd be doing ourselves a disservice, I feel like, if we didn't take that information. But then, like I said, if we didn't take that information and try to improve from it, but then, like I said, like you said, it's a scary process. Like it's scary to make those improvements. So I guess the question comes down to how, and maybe this is probably exactly what you do. How do you take that pain and grow from it? That's the $1,000,000 question right there. Like how do you take that scary moment and improve, either before the divorce, or if they're working with you, maybe after the divorce, unfortunately.
Well, that's the work I do.
Yeah.
Is looking at those moments. If you have an emotional reaction to something, or if you have an emotion, the basis behind my work is that there's something inside of that emotion that you don't understand. A lot of the time, relationships go back to childhood. And so a lot of the time, the work we do is getting them to feel the emotion and go back to the origin of that, of where that emotion comes from. And a lot of the time, it comes down to not being worthy of love, or not being worthy of receiving love, or usually it's a very, very innocent origin.
Right.
There's usually like a child trapped inside of there
Yeah.
that is feeling unloved.
Yeah, man, that self-worth one, that can ruin a lot of relationships, intimate or professional or whatever.
Mhm.
Um so we covered a lot of things. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you wanted to go over or cover or get into?
Yeah, one thing.
Okay.
If you're coming out of out of a divorce. And I'm going to suggest 3 rituals. And these are very basic, but I'm willing to bet that almost nobody does them. Every day, these are your new 3 rituals if you're going through a divorce or a tough breakup or anything difficult. Number 1, get out and do some movement.
Hmm.
Go for a walk. We got a dog right after we got together, and I was still going through my divorce. And thank God we did, because every day I had to get up and walk her. Very basic stuff. But do that every day, stack it up over a year. You're going to start craving that ritual. And it can be a walk, it could be going to the gym, whatever it is, move. Number 2, some sort of presence practice, meaning be in the moment. What usually happens is depression is anger about the past, anxiety is worry about the future.
Mm-hmm.
So past is over, future hasn't happened yet, get into now. So do that with a presence practice. What I mean by that is anything that gets you into the present moment. So mine is boxing, because you can't worry about what's going to happen tomorrow if you're worried about getting punched in the face.
Right.
And there's no better teacher than that. So again, these are very basic things. And the last one is very basic. Go outside. Be time in nature. Don't,
Mm-hmm.
if you live in the city, go to the park. Go find some time in nature. It's got a grounding effect. It's going to absorb some of those emotions you're going through. Do those 3 things, and you will start to develop more awareness. Those are your new 3 rituals.
I like that, man. I like that. That really. I mentioned Andrew Huberman. I don't know if you know who that is or not.
Yep.
Yeah. I love his content because it's so, he talks about the circadian biology and everything. And there's a connection to that stuff, getting outside, being in the sunlight, taking a walk, movement, that kind of thing. I mean, being present. What's fascinating? And I've talked about this on a podcast before. Like the present moment is literally all there is.
Yep.
That's all that exists. The past, every memory you have is another present moment. The future
And
that
you
you
don't know,
imagine.
and your memories aren't true either. They're filtered. They're biased.
Well, that's a really good point. That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, I mean that makes sense though, but yeah, I don't know, man. It's just like I think that movement when especially getting outdoors, I can't imagine if you're, depressed or feeling bad about something just staying inside. I mean, that's probably the last thing you want to do.
You try and be look, I know divorce is a heavy thing and we're talking about heavy stuff, but you will, I guarantee you, I'll give you your money back if it doesn't happen. But just go outside, move around. You will feel multitudes better.
Yeah. So just for anybody who doesn't know, Dr. Andrew Huberman explained on his podcast, like if you move, if you're walking past, it can't be on a treadmill. It has to be something that you actually see movement past your eyes. So if you walk or you run in a park or even down the street and you're just seeing things past your eyes, that calms the amygdala, which is like the fear of the stress center in the brain. So there's neuroscience behind it. So just moving, just walking down the street can calm you. But I think that movement is everything, man. The sunlight, being present. I think that's all those are great topics.
And I'll just give myself a plug here. I do a meditation cave on Sunday mornings. If you check out my website, I've got meditation. That's also one of my things to get into the present moment. Wake up every day, spend about 5-10 minutes meditating, and then on with my day.
Okay. So if you want to send me a link to that or anything, I can attach it to these videos.
Sure.
Do you have anything else online, social media or website or anything?
I'm just setting up. I got a website, divorce-daddy.com.
Okay.
The idea there is that what you were talking about earlier around having control, and it's meant to be a little cheeky. Yes, I work with fathers, but also give men back that daddy energy.
Right.
And it is, I'm telling you, it is so powerful. Daddy is that energy where he's just got it,
Right.
and, kids look up to it. Women want it.
Yeah.
Get that energy back. I think we've really lost it. And I want to help men get back to that.
Okay. Well, listen, I definitely appreciate your time here today. There's one thing I usually ask everybody before we close, and this is an answer that you can answer to whatever degree you're comfortable. But if you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, that could be somebody you've worked with, something in your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it. What do you think is one of the most important lessons you've ever learned?
You can't force, I alluded to this earlier, but you can't force somebody to grow if they don't want to. And it
Hmm.
is very dangerous to try to force somebody to grow.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that growth absolutely has to be that person's decision. You know,
Yeah.
I don't see how it happens otherwise, but
It's a foreign concept to me to be happy with where you are. I want to be moving forward all the time.
hmm,
And I don't resonate with people who are happy with, and I don't mean who are happy. I just mean are, who want to stay where they're at. It's
hmm,
just such a foreign concept to me. But I've found anytime I've tried to push somebody to a self-improvement plan, it has blown up in my face.
yeah.
So don't force it.
Well, you know what's crazy, man, is I think one of the sources for the mental health. So I think there's a mental health crisis on for both genders, men and women. I think for men, one of the big sources of that is the lack of this pursuit or this betterment of themselves. They don't have, a lot of men these days don't have a thing they're working towards, whether that's a family or career. Like, we're not trying to, a lot of us are not trying to pursue ourselves in a certain way. And I think men need that. I think they need that continuous improvement of themselves. I think everybody needs that, to be honest with you, but I think especially men, because we're so, by nature, that our ancestors were out, gathering things and fighting for things and battling things, and we don't have a lot of that going on these days. And so I think that a lot of us we're missing that, and I think that's a big source of the mental health factors for men. And I think for women, it's this, I mean, continuous, like, they're just inundated on social media about, like, what the other women look like, and I'm supposed to look like this and this. They're beautiful. They're all beautiful, but then they see the person online, which is like completely fabricated. First of all, it's completely fabricated. Second of all, it's like a very small portion of that person's life. You see a picture or whatever, and it's like a very small percentage. And it's like they're by nature, they're comparing themselves, because even everybody does that. Even men do that. We get on social media and we compare ourselves. And so I think that's a big thing for women, man, is they just, they can't see the beauty in themselves because the beauty in others is magnified on social media. You know.
I'm hoping, I believe things go at like a pendulum. They swing one way and then they swing back the other. And I feel like it swung so far this way because of social media to be superficial, that I'm hoping it's starting. Well, I am feeling that effect of swinging back towards genuineness. And I hope it does. And I hope it doesn't overcorrect to that way. But I think that's the antidote to what you're describing.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Um, excuse me. Listen, man, I'm gonna let you get out of here. I appreciate it. I appreciate the time and insight today. We went over some heavy things, but I think there's a lot of good things that people can take from that, and definitely use to improve their life. So I definitely appreciate the time and insight here today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on here, Cody.
Hey guys, I appreciate you tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, you can find more content at Pure Wisdom Podcast. This is on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and Google Podcasts. There you can like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.